Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Politics with Vince. This is our first live stream today, and I'm here in a beautiful, beautiful Washington, D.C. on a lovely Tuesday afternoon. Sorry for the delay. We're running a little behind today, having some minor technical issues this afternoon. It's our first live stream, like I said, so bear with me as it will progress and become a lot better here soon. So you just got to give me a little bit longer and we'll get it all the little kinks worked out. So welcome to Politics with Vince. We are thrilled to be here. I should say I am thrilled to be here and to be talking with all of you today about all of the craziness, greatness, amazing stuff of politics in America today. The audio and the video and all this fun stuff here on this live stream is very available for you to hopefully hear me well. Says my connection's great, so looks like we're making progress in that. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, don't hesitate to leave a comment here in the sidebar here on YouTube, or tweet at me at VinnyLow480 on Twitter. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can, as quick as I can. Like I said, just bear with me as we move forward with the working out all the little kinks in this new progress, as this will be an every Tuesday thing. So welcome to Politics with Vince. So let's talk about it today. Well, this is our first episode, and we have a lot to talk about. As I had said last week in my video that did the commercial for this week, is that we're going to be discussing a lot of controversial topics that are very touchy, topics in which we have to address in our country and figure out what's the best process to move forward with. Like I said last week, I'm a Democrat. I am a more moderate Democrat. You know, I lean a little bit to the right middle in the Democratic spectrum. So I am more open. I'm very open-minded and wanting to hear everyone's opinions and beliefs. But I also stay not far enough from the far left. So I'm pretty down the middle. I'm a pretty straight shooter. So today, I mean, like I said, I'm sitting out here in Washington, D.C., beautiful outdoors. You can probably hear all the lovely traffic coming through and by. And I came out and I looked up at the sun and I thought about Donald Trump yesterday as he took his eclipse glasses and put them to the side and just looked at the sun himself. So that's how that went. So today, let's talk about some things happening in our country today. One of the big topics I want to talk about today is our topic of race in America. Since last week's, 2 weeks ago now, events in Charlottesville and kind of what's been going on in our country leading to this point. In regards to us talking about, you know, now we're taking down monuments left and right and changing names of schools, changing names of recreational centers, highways, you name it, it's all being changed today. And in the process. The other thing I want to talk about today is recent news. Congressman Tim Ryan, per an article in The Hill today, Congressman Tim Ryan, a Democrat out of Ohio, has not put out the chances that he might be seeking a run for the White House in 2018. The congressman has been a very avid voice on the Hill, as you guys know. Last year, last year he was very pushing the movement of the Democratic Party and trying to redo where we were headed as a party. He also then challenged Speaker at the time, Speaker Ryan and Nancy Pelosi and others for speakership within the House. So there's a lot of things going on today in Washington. So let's just talk about a few of them. So I want to talk about the race of America, and that is one of my biggest things so far, and I think a big topic of us moving forward in this country. The question being is, at what point is enough enough? And I say that very, very cautiously because I myself am very understanding and knowledgeable of what the surroundings were based on what had happened to individuals at that time, during the Confederate time, during slavery, during the 1960s Jim Crow laws, during the whole enchilada. And I'm very, open to that. But at the same token, I enjoy history. I love learning new things and being a part of it, and really understanding the history of our country. And so at what point, the question is, at what point is enough enough? And so I sit here today as I'm doing this live stream, and I'm thinking about, where are we going as a country? Are we going too far right? Are we going too far left? Are we too far down the middle? Are we too far, just lost? Or what is the outlook? And so in our country, we are constantly, putting each other and marginalizing each other into these little sects of, this is you, this is me, and this is your part of the pie, my part of the pie, and that's it. Don't come close. But we talk about this one fundamental thing of living the American dream, being the American dream, accomplishing the American dream. And so to me, I then take that and say, well, what is the American dream? What are we discussing when we constantly put ourselves in these little villages, if you will, of, this is you, this is me, this is this. And so in Washington recently, last week here in the Washington area in Arlington, Virginia, a local high school known as Washington Lee High School, a very, very well-known school, a lot of well-known alumni from that high school here in Arlington. They were just seeking a name change via the Arlington School Board, in which they have now said that, yes, we're going to take this idea up. We're going to talk about changing the name of Washington Lee. And not only that, a local state senator, Senator Adam Eban of Virginia, Northern Virginia, Arlington, Alexandria area, has taken up legislation in which we're going to seek now the approval to change the names of Jefferson Davis Highway, which is Route 1, runs through right off of 395 going southbound through Alexandria, and also changing the name of Lee Highway, which goes off of 395 going out towards the Winchester Front Royal area of Virginia. And so my question is, at which point is enough enough? And so, being an avid history buff as myself, I love to learn new things. I love to celebrate history, but also understanding and being cognizant of the fact that we live in Virginia. See, I did my secondary education in Virginia, and we're taught in Virginia the history of Virginia, the history of the South and the Union and the Confederacy, and we are taught about everything. The colonization of Jamestown. Anything and everything about the foundation of our country is taught in Virginia public schools. And so, to me, I think about, well, if you're going to take down the monument of honoring, Robert E. Lee, or honoring Jefferson Davis, or whomever was a part of the Confederacy and a part of the history of Virginia, then you might as well start with coming to Washington and taking down, the White House or the Capitol or Longworth and Rayburn and Cannon and all of the buildings here in Washington that honor and have held persons in leadership that once owned slaves, or were once members of the Ku Klux Klan, or were once members of a different supremacy group. So, I mean, at one point, that's my point. At some point, when is enough enough? And so, I constantly have been thinking about this since last week when I decided, well, I'm going to start doing a YouTube video kind of thing, and kind of figure out where we will be able to have these conversations. And so, I find myself puzzled in the fact that when's enough enough? And so, I think that it's important for us to remember our history. I think it's important for us to know our history, only because if we put our history away and we don't want to understand it or know it, then it automatically leaves room for us to, again, repeat that history. In which we don't want to repeat that history, especially those past that have been so detrimental to the lives of others here in our country. And so I think about it and I said, well, why should we rename Jefferson Davis Highway? It's just getting a little ridiculous now. It really is. And I think that, when we think about all of this, we get our emotions tied up into it, and we get all, upset about the fact that this is what it was, this is what it represents. But at the same token, we cannot deny the fact that that's the history of our country. That's the history in which many Americans, many people who immigrated to this country experienced, were a part of, and it was something that was just the foundation of this country, and it's always going to be the history of this country no matter how you look at it. And so for me, that's how I view it. I don't view it as a room for me to claim it's being racist or biased or whatever. I look at it for what it's worth, for what the value of it is. See, if we want to talk about changing race in America, if we want to talk about changing a race and cultures, then we need to talk about the educational values and things that students are learning in class. See, if you don't want them to learn about Robert E. Lee, if you don't want them to learn about Jefferson Davis, or you don't want them to learn about, Ulysses S. Grant, who was the President of the United States, who also owned slaves, then let's not talk about history. Let's not teach that. But see, now if we don't do that, then we don't meet the standards of education, and we don't meet the criteria in which people want us to learn. So it's like, you can't have both bites of the pie. You got to have one or the other. You can't have a soda and you can't have an orange juice. It's one or the other. And so for me, that's where I look at it like, okay, are we crying wolf? Are we just creating something for the hell of it? Is that what it is? Or what are we doing? And so that's why I get so frustrated with the Democratic Party. It's because you look at the history of our elections, you look at the history of where we're going in our country, and where we've been as a Democrat. We just don't have a platform for anything. We just kind of, oh my God, somebody thinks this, somebody thinks that, so we jump on that, and that becomes our towing issue of the election, our towing issue of our platform, whatever. And so we have this constant feud with one another where people don't feel represented or underrepresented. And let's get back to representing each other, because now the Democratic Party, as well as the Republican in many cases, has now become the parties of those who have never had that strong of a voice on the party. So you having people who have not really ever had to understand the full capacity of the issue. Rather, they're just focused on single issues, and so that's who's representing both sides of the aisles now. And so the Democrats, have lost a vote in being the representative of the working man, of the working class, and being that person. And today they have just become the representative of things that are important, they're valuable, but they're not at the foundation or at the fundamental points of America and where we need to be. For instance, we talk primarily about social issues as Democrats. We talk about being, a party of equality for everyone and for everything. But we don't talk about, having an open economy or having foreign policy in which is suitable for the country or for the world. And see, we didn't talk about that during our election, during last election when President Trump was able to take the win from Hillary. We didn't talk about that. We only talked about women's rights and gay rights and, whatever was going on at that point. We were talking about that. And so that's why, as a country, we see us being so divided consistently and being so far from being able to have this dialogue with one another, in which we're able to be understanding, in which we're able to be tolerant, as the Democrats would say, and being open-minded. And so that has kind of surpassed us. We don't believe in compromise anymore in our political system. We don't believe in arguing on the floor, taking our arguments, and then walking out the front door and being best friends again. We don't do that in American politics today. We don't do that in where points of us doing that would be very important and useful in us accomplishing our goals. Today, we just kind of put everybody in this little bit of a wall and tell them that's what it is and that's how it's going to be. And so that's why we are where we are today. And so when I think about where we're going as a country, again, That question is to be determined, and to be determined by the fact that we have no real understanding of what's happening in this country. We don't have an understanding of the real issues in this country in which people's lives are being affected every day. We want to Republicans want to get rid of Obamacare. Why? Because Obamacare is so terrible that no one has health care? Why? Because it's so expensive? No. They want to get rid of Obamacare because it enables them to have control, again, of people's lives and people who cannot afford to have those opportunities. See, for me, I'm only 23 as of this past weekend. And so I understand that one of the most important things with Obamacare was the fact that you can stay on his health care plan or your parents' insurance plan until you were 26 of age. Me, I'm 23. I got 3 more years left on it. So I'm thankful because not only am I, having a full-time job, trying to find out, figure out my life, just finishing college, and so just trying to get my life together where I'm able to know that had something, or if something was to happen to me within, now and tomorrow or whenever, and between 26, I have health care, and I'm covered, and I'm healthy, and I'm able to be seen by a physician and get the surgery, or whatever the issue is, I'm able to accomplish that, thanks to the Obamacare. And so when I think about people who constantly beat on Obamacare and tell me how terrible it is and how horrible it is, I mean, it is fundamentally the best healthcare system and program we've ever had in this country beforehand. And so when we talk about, why healthcare is the way it is, it's because of pharmaceutical companies. It's because of people who like to rip the poor man or the working man off. And that's what we are in this country. See, the rich don't pay enough taxes. The poor don't pay taxes. But the middle class, the working man and woman and family pay taxes and fees and everything to the maximum. And so, you might be middle class, you might be living life and enjoying life, but you're paying for everybody in our country. Why don't we tax the rich? And it's evident, obviously, we can't tax the poor because that would just be very, very wrong in many ways, just because, they obviously don't have the financial means, so why would we put that burden on them again? But then also, we don't talk about abilities or ways in which we can lift up the poor and the underserved and the underclass. We don't talk about opportunities in which we can work with them in their communities or enable them to go get an additional education or a higher education or a secondary education or a GED or something that will give them that stepping stone forward and being useful to our country. We don't talk about that today. We don't talk about how we're going to help each other move forward and make this country better. All we talk about is how I'm going to make my pockets more greased, how I'm going to get to the top, and how I'm going to forget everybody at the bottom. And today, that is why we are where we are today. Today, that is why we have leadership in our country who claims to be representatory of each other and representatory of our people, but are not. Today, we have leadership who is working to enable themselves to reach higher plateaus and echelons in government or in world politics or in or in local, domestic, international, whatever level of political game they're looking for, that's what they're looking for. And as, a member of the Democratic Party who always has been supportive of helping those in need and helping those come up the ranks and being there for the underserved and the working class and being the voice of those and the representatory of the people of our country in which live today, we do not do that. Today, we just constantly pick and choose who we want to represent. We pick and choose who we want to oppress. We pick and choose who we don't want to see make their way up to the ladder. And so that is where we are today as a country, and that is a fundamental bias and flaw and fallacy in every aspect in our country. And so in order for us to get to be able to create a more perfect union and to be able to create an evidential society that is representatory of us as a country, we must stop oppressing, we must stop deterring, and we must stop moving away from the values of our country. See, Don't get me wrong here. I'm understanding of the values of our country and where we've been societal, where we've been historically, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that we have values that have been so important to us as Americans since the day we were given our freedom on our birth. We have been protected by fundamental rights that are inalienable to all in America. And for us to strip those rights away from each other and to move and to appease those in power or those with the money or those whom are seeking, higher standing in our government or in our corporate world or wherever, we have to be understanding of that. The Democrats, like I have said time and time and time and time again, we are moving away from being representative of our people. Moving away from being representative of our country. Moving away from being representative of the values and principles of not only our party, but also our country. So when we talk about getting rid of things in our country and getting rid of certain historical artifacts, such as those that are, out there in the public, think about what you're getting rid of and why you're getting rid of it. Think about whose life you're affecting, or others' views or opinions you're affecting or oppressing. See, I understand that, sure, I disagree with certain views and certain things that people say, offensive words, racial slurs, etc., etc. But at the same token, I'm understanding of the fact that they have a right. They have a constitutional right of freedom of speech, and we cannot impose on them. We cannot oppress them because of their views. And that's one of the greatest things about this country. But today, as a member of the Democratic Party and as a party as a whole, we are constantly oppressing those people and their voices and their opinions. Sure, we all disagree with them. Sure, we understand that it's just completely wrong to say something like that. But we also need to be cognizant of the fact that that is a right of them. And that is a right that they have as an American. And that is a right that they have as a person and simply as a human being. Even though we completely disagree, even though we don't see eye to eye, or we feel like we're being offended or oppressed, or whatever the means of us feeling insulted, we know that they still have those rights. And that's what we need to remember in this country. That's what we need to remember today. And that's what needs to be remembered right now. And so when I think and I look and like I said, I'm from California originally, but I grew up here in Washington D.C. area, and I look and I went to school outside of Pittsburgh, a small town, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and when I look at the little bubble that we live here in Washington D.C. in the D.C. metro area, and the bubble that we live in Los Angeles, California, or the bubble in New York City, or the bubble in Chicago, or Atlanta, or Dallas, or Houston, or wherever, all of these small metropolitan areas, we live in a bubble, and we think that things need to be this way, or that way, or this way, whatever it is, right? And politically speaking. And so, that's what we see. But when you go out of this little bubble and you go, 35 miles south of Washington, D.C., down I-95, you're going to see a whole new world. You're going to see that a lot of those people don't agree or see things the way we see things here in the D.C. area. You're going to see that a lot of people disagree with the values or beliefs that we share. And so when I left to Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, for school, I was completely shocked, because I wasn't shocked, like culture shock, because I've traveled so much, I've seen different cultures, I've seen different things, but I was shocked in the fact that, wow, it's true. People do not believe the way we believe in Washington, D.C. or in these major cities where everything goes and it's a free-for-all. And so that to me opened my eyes, and I said, well, I guess the rest of America does speak. I mean, because really there's no other major cities between here and California. I mean, sure there are, but, that's besides the point. And so when we look at the context of this country, we have to be open-minded to everything in this world and everything in this country as We don't just live in small town Mayberry, or we don't just live in big city Washington, D.C. or New York. We live in a country that is so blessed and so beautiful and amazing in every aspect. And so when we talk about denying our history and putting away monuments and getting rid of certain things or certain ways because it's offensive or it isn't offensive, let's be cognizant of the fact that you might be offending somebody just because you want it down. You might be offending others because you don't want this or don't want that. And you know, just because we don't like it doesn't mean others do. Just because we disagree with it doesn't mean others don't. And so when we look at where we're going in this country and where we're going, we need to understand that our leadership and whom we put in office and whom we elect is what is the representation of our country. Even though we might disagree greatly, even though we might not believe it, it is what it is. And so it brings me to my next topic and point about Donald Trump and his election as president and why he won the presidency. And it's not because the people who voted for him were deplorables, or the people who voted for him were uneducated, or ignorant in politics, or ignorant in race, or whatever you want to call it. It wasn't because of that. It wasn't because they completely agreed or supported the president. It wasn't because they thought that he would be the best man fit for the job. It wasn't any of that. It was simply because Donald Trump represented what America wanted, what America saw, what America thought would make America great again. And that's no pun intended to his slogan. But when you think about the platform and the ideas and the beliefs that Democrats ran on under Hillary Clinton, it was all about social dilemmas and social movements in our country. It was not about the working class. It was not about jobs. It was not about our economy. It was not about foreign and international relations. It was not about any of that. And Donald Trump and the Republicans they had a platform for everything. Whether or not you agreed or believed it, they had a platform. And that was just the reason why they won. And so Donald Trump has indeed done some very questionable things as a leader of our country. He has absolutely oppressed certain sects and peoples of our country. He has absolutely been a clown and underrepresentatory of our country doing his foreign travels. He has embarrassed our country in almost everything he does, sure. But he wasn't a Clinton. But he wasn't an Obama. He wasn't a Jeb Bush or a Bush. He was not what people wanted in politics. Because people got tired of the constant Bush and Clinton and Obama and all of that, those people that represented us. And don't get me wrong, they weren't bad people, but enough was just enough. And enough was enough at the point that we weren't seeing any differences of effects or changes in our country. And so that's where we went, and that's why we are where we are today. And, you know, I come from a standpoint that I understand things on both sides. I see things on both sides, and I am definitely not an emotional driven thinker. I'm more of a rational, logical, idealistic thinker in the sense that I understand things and I don't let it affect me whether it's good or bad. I figure out what is the point of it. And so that's why I look at all sides and all things and try to understand, you know, why did this happen or why didn't that happen? And so one thing you're going to see here on Politics with Vince is you're going to see me. I'm going to have some special guests on here joining me on the show, and we're going to have open discussions, and I'm going to moderate some type of debate that is going to be valuable not only to me but to you, to discuss things that are occurring in our country. And so today it's August 22nd. We're about 7 months, a little over 7 months in to the president's first term, first year in office. And we're going to be covering, the interesting effects that come out within the next, couple months here on this show. But we're also going to be talking about ways in which we can gear up for 2018 for Democrats to take back our Congress and our White House and our local and state houses and governorships, and ways that you can get involved. But we're also going to talk about how we can help reshape the Democratic message to be inclusive of all people, to be inclusive of America and what we as a Democratic Party represented, to be cognizant of the fact that being too progressive and being too far left too quickly will halt a lot of our elections, will halt us in being a dominant party in our country again. And that's not to say that I don't think that we will ever be again elected. Sure we will. But we have to redefine our platform. We have to redefine who the Democratic Party is and who we want to be. That means that, we need to change the leadership in the House. We need a change of Nancy Pelosi's got to go. We need a change of the guard. It's changing of the guard, and that's what needs to happen. That's what's going to only make America great again. That's what's only going to be able to do the work that we need to do as Democrats. And so I urge you, the viewers and people who are watching, to really do your research on our party, on our country, and on where we want to be and how we're going to get there, and the fundamental platform that's going to get us over the edge. And so, as we get ready to sign off here in a few minutes, I urge you, if you guys have questions or topics or anything like that you want to talk about or want to hear me discuss or hear my point of view, leave a comment, send me a tweet, send me a Facebook message. I'm a very open person, so like I said, send it to me. I'll pretty much get back to you as soon as possible. So if you got questions, comments, concerns, or want to talk about something that's you're not really into or want to know more about, then drop me a line on here, and I'll get back to you. So that's just how it's going to go. We'll be back here every Tuesday at noon. At noon next Tuesday, promise. Like I said, we had some technical difficulties trying to get on air. Trying to get all this things all sorted out. It takes a whole process. So I tried it last night. It worked. I tested it last night. It worked. And then I tried to get on earlier, and it was doing some weird things. So we had some technical difficulties. So we'll be back on next Tuesday at noon. That's at 12, not 12:30, but at noon. And we'll probably pop on and off sometime throughout the week or whenever. The show itself will be every Tuesday, but we'll probably be getting on and off every couple days or so, just depending on what's trending in our news, what's trending on on Twitter or whatever is something that I think is important or I would like to discuss. We'll definitely have that coming up. So you remember, just give me a follow on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and follow me. If you have more questions, you want to learn a bit more about me, you can visit my website. hearing a little bit about what I have to say about politics today. But just kidding. This is just the start. So we're going to have a lot more in detail and more valuable conversations to come by next Tuesday. We're just getting things, like I said, getting things off the ground running and figuring out all these little technical things. So most likely by next week we're going to have a whole bunch of different new camera stuff and all this, new things getting itself worked out. So we're ironing out the kinks. But like I said, questions, comments, concerns, want to talk about a topic, just drop in and say hello. All right, guys. It was nice talking with all you guys, and we'll be seeing you guys on the other side. Politics with Vince.